future, very excited about technology and how technology comes into play. You know, I use technology a lot. Leonardo da Vinci was a great believer in technology. I can just imagine what he would create today with what we have at our disposal. And probably if there wasn't something, he would invent it. And with today's technology, I'm sure he would do some amazing things. But myself, I'm just a mere artist. Now, I'm not Leonardo da Vinci, so I don't have that ability. But what I try to do with my art is express emotions, transmit messages, universal messages. All of my art is about that. It's about bringing people together. It's about uniting people. In fact, the three sculptures we're going to talk about today, they are, all three of them are public installation. One of them, the first one is well, at least it's been permanent for now, and hopefully it will stay in the location it is. The other two were temporary installations, and this, of course, causes a different way of processing the artwork, of working through problems, because it's different, of course, if a sculpture is permanent than if a sculpture is temporary, because you don't have to worry about certain things like material degradation and so forth and so on. When it's when it's permanent, instead, you have to think about that. You have to think of the durability. You have to think that this piece is going to be there for centuries, right? I mean, I did a beautiful. I was so lucky. I did an amazing installation in front of the pyramids, and we'll talk about that later. But these structures have been up for 4,500 years. So I hope you guys get to build something like that. That's one of my biggest dreams. Is one of the reasons why I'm an artist. One of the reasons I'm an artist is because of the legacy I can leave behind. You know, when I go into a museum and I see Bernini, or I see a Michelangelo or Rodin or any of the Renaissance artists or before them, you know, the work is still alive today. You can see their hands touching that artwork, modeling that, sculpting, chiseling that marble. And that is something that has always fascinated me, how it's something can be so contemporary and yet have been made centuries ago. And you feel the soul of the artist through that. And the same with the buildings. You know, when you see the Colosseum, you see all these incredible structures around the world. It's incredible. And yeah, that's one of my dreams, that if I can do that I can leave something lasting behind as an artist. And I'm sure as an architect and designer, you want to do the same. So let's talk about the first sculpture. The first sculpture, I'm going to share a screen here. Let's see, share screen. Okay. All right, and here we go. So the first sculpture we're going to talk about is called Building Bridges. Building Bridges is a very large sculpture that was installed in Venice and is still in Venice today. It was installed for the Venice Biennale of 2019. It was supposed to be a 6-month installation. And well, it's now 2022. So it's been there for a while. And there was talks of it staying in Venice. And at the moment, that has not been decided yet, whether it's going to remain permanent or if it's going to be moved to a different site. But this is a very large sculpture. This sculpture took me months to prepare, to design, to sculpt. The way I worked was first I made a smaller scale model, and I'm going to show you a few. This is the images with the scaffolding, because originally the sculpture was not supposed to be here. You have to imagine that I sent, let's see, I think there were 14 trucks left from Spain to go to, this is the original drawing. Of course, each hand has a meaning behind: friendship, help, love, wisdom, hope, and faith. These are the values I wanted to give. It's called building bridges. Venice, of course, is a city of bridges. And Venice has always been connected to the world, and has always, it's been a big trade city. And so it was very important for me to do it there. So let me show you at first a brief video, and then I'll show you another one, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. Okay, so that is where the sculpture was meant to be. And this is where the sculpture eventually ended up being, and I'll tell you about that.
Lorenzo, I guess you're on mute right now. We can't hear anything.
Lorenzo, can you hear us? I think he has some connection problem. We can wait for a bit. Lorenzo has come again. Lorenzo, are you there? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry. How long was I?
That's not a problem. You had internet connection problem, right?
Okay. How long was I gone for? I mean, did you get the videos? Did you see the videos?
Yeah, while you are presenting the videos, your voice has gone.
My voice was gone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So if I show videos, I can't speak at the same time.
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, forget that. So you saw the videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this was a massive operation. We had 300 people working, 3 teams. We had Spain, we had Italy, and we had England. We had the public relations department. We had the architects in Italy and in Spain. We had engineers in Italy and Spain. Of course, we had the transport. We had the security protocol that we had to follow. So we had firemen. It was a huge undertaking. To that date, it was the biggest one that we did, and it was incredible because first of all, I showed you 2 locations, okay? And these locations were close to one another, but were very different from one another. And so we had to do a complete different planning from one to the other. And I had been planning the first location, I'd been planning for an entire year. So all the designs were pertaining to that first installation area. And it was designed to spec, to the centimeter, down to the millimeter. We knew about weight distribution. We knew about transport, safety. We had everything. We know about loads, like weight control, how much we could load in that area, and how we had to spread the weights, because it's still Venice. Venice is like a floating city. So there's only so much you can do in the city, and only so much the local art council will allow you to do. And so that was all planned, and we had all the permits. And then 45 days before, for a reason it's still not clear to me, we were told that we had to move. We had to move to a different location, and that we could not install the hands there in that location, which meant basically redoing the study, the engineering plans. At this time, the space that they gave us was wider than the original area, but we could not change the angles of the bridges because that structure was already built. So we had to build scaffolding, which is still there today. And of course, we had to present the new drawings and the new engineering plans within record time, because then we had to have it approved, and then we had to have time to install it. And of course, change what we had to change. So I remember we had to cut one of the big hands. We had to cut the arms to make it fit, and the others we had to adapt other ways. But we had so little time to do it. So it was crazy. It was a crazy operation. But thank God we were able to do it. We were able, because I had a great team. It's very important to work with a great team, and I had a great team behind me, and they supported me. It took a lot of effort, and fortunately also money. It took a lot of money and effort to fix to the second location, but we made it in time. I remember the day that we were inaugurating with Andrea Bocelli. I still remember today that we were painting. You know, the hands were not finished, but we kind of like gave them a makeup. So we painted over, you know, the defects. And then in the following week or two, we actually finished the sculpture. So really for the inauguration, it was just makeup. The piece was not completely finished. It took us an extra 2 weeks to finish. But look, I mean, to the world and to the press, you know, they looked good and we were incredibly happy. So it was a big effort from everybody. The gallery was, it's called Halcyon Gallery. It's a London gallery that, you know, backed me, backed the operation. So it was very, very, very good. So yeah, this is a massive, massive job. Again, 6 hands, 14 trucks sending over from Spain, lots of design, lots of planning, and we can go over that. So I don't know if you have any specific questions about building bridges. What I'd like to do is, yeah, I'd like to divide it amongst the 3 projects we're going to talk about. I'd like to do a Q&A on each piece first, and then move to the second one. So
so if there's anyone who wants to ask questions, they can raise their hands from the raise hand button.
Can I ask one?
Yeah, of course.
I was wondering, what was your starting point for your work, all of it?
Not for this one in particular, for all of my work.
All of it, for your career.
For my career. Yeah, so when I was young, I started drawing, and then actually I did an exhibition in Hawaii when I was 18 years old. And that was my first exhibition, or maybe younger. Maybe I think it was like 17. I think it was 17 or 18, doesn't matter. I was very young. And I remember something, it was very specific because, well, I think that a lot of people don't know, but my father was also a painter and a sculptor. I mean, a lot of people know him as an actor, but actually in his later years, in his career, he earned more money as a painter and sculptor than he did as an actor. He was much more active. And he had been painting and sculpting his whole life, but didn't really take it seriously until later on. So he was given a very big space in Hawaii to do a very big art show with a gallery called Center Art Galleries. And my father had a lot. My father had a lot of children. He had 13 children. In fact, I think there's probably some more out there. We're still counting. But of all the children that he had, 2 of them, myself and Catalina, my stepsister from his first marriage, we were at that time, we were both painters. Now I'm a sculptor, but that time I was a painter. I was a surrealist painter. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. I love Salvador Dali. But anyway, so I was making some paintings, and she had made some paintings also. She lived in Arizona, and there were some beautiful native paintings that she was doing. And anyway, so, you know, Western art. So he gave each one of us a room in this very big exhibition space that he had. He gave us a room where we could just exhibit our work. And something interesting happened because my show was a success. I sold every painting that was in there. but the paintings were extremely cheap. You know, they were maybe like $350 to $500. I think the biggest one, which was pretty big, was maybe like I don't know, meter and a half by maybe 2 meters. That was just 750. This was dollars. So yes, so I sold every painting, and this is the great lesson that I got, because I only was thinking, I was a young guy, and this is the mistake I made. So I got my lesson early on in life. I remember that I said, oh my God, look at this. I can paint and I can make money, and this is great. And so all I did was think about that. And so I went back to my studio and I started making more paintings and bigger paintings, because I wasn't thinking about the quality. I was thinking about the quantity. And then the following year I did a show with the same people in the same room, and I didn't even sell one painting. And that was a great lesson for me, because it taught me that it's not about the money. It's about the passion with which you do things. It's about the quality and the standards that you have to do things with. And so from then on, I promised myself that I would never do that again, and that I would never think about the money aspect, but I would think about trying to do my best job, the best job I could ever make. So that was, yeah, when I was 19. And after that, I started sculpting, because that gallery owner, he told me, he said, Lorenzo, why don't you try to sculpt? Can you try to sculpt? And I said, sure, I'll try to sculpt. And I tried to sculpt, and I made a pair of hands. That was my first sculpture. And I never stopped ever since. Then eventually I stopped painting and I only sculpted. The beginnings were very nice, though. I remember it was tough. It was very, very tough. As a sculptor, it's very tough, because sculpting is expensive. It's not like painting or drawing. You know, you're talking about a bigger studio. You're talking about a foundry. You're talking about the material itself. It's expensive. So in the beginning, I couldn't make big sculptures. I couldn't even work in bronze, because I couldn't pay for bronze. So I would use a material that was a bronze lookalike. It's called, well, here in Europe, they call it like a bronze resin. In the States, it's called bonded bronze. So the surface is a bronze powder, but underneath it's a resin. So the surface looks like bronze, but it's not. And I would exhibit the work like that. And if the client liked it, then I would cast it in bronze for them, because I didn't have money to make it in bronze. But I love those moments. I love those moments because I was with my friends and we were setting up the shows. We would rent the truck. We would make the crates. We would make the pedestals. And it was a good moment, you know. It was a lot of hard work. But the days that it went well and the show went well, it was nice. It was lovely. And then, of course, eventually I started working with galleries. But, you know, listen, it hasn't been an overnight success. It's been 35 years. So it takes time, you know, especially the art world. It's a slow process. And that's why you really have to be passionate about it, because it's not something that comes overnight. It's many, many years of exhibiting, you know, and suffering. In the beginning, there's a lot of suffering. So you're only going to suffer for something that you love doing. That's for sure. And you have to understand in the beginning that there's going to be a lot of that suffering, but you just have to keep on doing it. You're doing it because you love it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
As far as I know, Leonardo da Vinci worked with the cadavers to master the anatomy. And I was wondering, how did you study the hand anatomy while doing your sculptures?
Yeah, I also did some dissection. I studied in some medical schools. So I studied at the New York City Art Academy, which is right by the Guggenheim. But probably I learned most of what I learned was, there's some great books now. So, which really help you a lot. There are now lots of apps that also help you a lot with the study of the body. I don't think you have to dissect nowadays. I mean, it helps because, of course, seeing it live, there's nothing like seeing it live. But not everybody's stomach is up to it. So, and it, you know, when you have the arm and you're actually pulling on the tendons and see how it works, it's something quite spectacular. But again, it's not absolutely necessary. If you do know that, and if you have the ability to do that, and you have the stomach to do that, of course, listen, the more you know, the better it is. And that's with anything. Anything that you want to do, the more you know about it, the better it is. So if you have the possibility to do a course, a dissection, that's fantastic. But there are, of course, other ways to do it. You don't necessarily have to do it. But I did study a lot, and I got all the anatomy books. I now still study anatomy. Once in a while, I'll do a brush-up course on anatomy. Yeah, I think it's what I said before. It's very important, and the more you know, the better it is, because that way you don't limit your creativity. You know, if your creativity is limited by your ability to actually create, the technique behind it, then you're never going to do what you actually set out to do in the first place. And even when you have a lot of abilities and technique, you still can't manage many times to do what you dreamt of doing. So again, the more you know, the more education you have, the better it is. And that works with anything, of course, in any field.
Thank you, Lorenzo. I think we can move on to your next presentation because we have some questions in that part as well.
Yeah.
So, by the way,
yeah,
sorry, we'll share the presentation again.
Which one? The support? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll share it. Yeah, I'll share it again. But if it's on, you don't hear me, right?
I think we can, but when video comes, we can't.
Okay, so if I can share the camera, but only you don't hear me when I share the videos, right? But you hear me when I share the screen, but not the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'll just keep that in mind. All right. So the next piece, the next sculpture is support. So let me introduce support a little bit. Okay. So this was for the Biennale of 2017, which, with any sculpture in a public space, the first thing you have to do, of course, you have to get permits to actually install the artwork there, okay? And this was a long process. And in Venice, it's particularly complicated because Venice has a lot of small spaces. It's not a big city, obviously, and it's cramped. It's complicated to get there. There are no roads. You have to do everything by boat. So it's very different than other locations. And this, I proposed like a nightmare job. They couldn't even believe I came up with this idea. You know, at first, when I spoke to people about it and said, this is what I'd like to do, you know, they thought I was completely crazy and out of my mind, which I am, of course, completely crazy and out of my mind. But in this case, I was even crazier and more out of my mind than usual, because I said, listen, they said, why don't you come up with an idea? Wait, let me give you a little bit of background. So support was placed in Venice during Venice Biennale, and there were two hands coming out of the water, and they were holding a building. And the building is called Casa Gredo, and it's a luxury 5-star hotel, which is, and the director is my cousin. Her name is Lorenza. So I was celebrating my birthday the year before. I was celebrating my 50th birthday. And she said, Lorenzo, why don't you come up with an idea for the Biennale, because you know the Biennale is coming up next year. Use my hotel however you want, come up with an idea, and then we'll try to make it come true. And so I'm sitting out on the terrace and I say, okay, I just had the idea. She's like, really, that quickly? I said, yeah, well, actually, it's sure. But it's something I've been thinking about for a while. But since you asked me now, I just tell you now. She was like, okay, well, what's your idea? And I'm like, I'd like to have 2 hands come out of the water supporting the building, because I think Venice needs support. Because as you know, Venice and many parts of the world, because of global warming, because of climate change, there are rising coastal waters around the world, and it is a big problem. Venice, aside from that, they have their own problems. They have the lagoon, the waters in the lagoon, which go up and down, not only due to climate change, but due to poor planning and engineering in the past few centuries. So, but you know, we have to protect the heritage, our heritage, what we've built, what human beings have been able to build. And of course, I am a strong believer in a sustainable world. I have 3 children. I think about their future. I think about their present, and of course, their future and the children's future. So for me, sustainability is really a big issue. And I wanted this work to represent that. To represent us humans coming together to support our present and future, and our World Heritage sites. So I made these hands white because it was purity, and also because marbles in Venice, and especially on this building, were white marbles. So I didn't want it to in any way distract from a local architecture. And of course, they were children's hands. I used my son's hands because the children, of course, they're the future. So that's why I use the child's hands. Now, it was so complicated. The first step was, of course, presenting the idea to be part of the Venice Biennale. So we presented the idea, I believe it was in December. We presented the project to the city, to the Biennale, to the Art Council, and they refused it. They said, no, we don't want it. Yeah. And so on the 6th of, it was on the 6th of December, I got a letter saying, thank you, but no thank you. So obviously, a normal guy would just say, well, listen, I tried and it didn't work. But again, I believe in going after your dreams and fighting for them. So I didn't give up. And I said, there must be another way. And so I fought, and I went directly to the mayor's office. And I said, Mr. Mayor, I would like to put these hands in your city. What do you think about it? He's crazier than I am. So he said, yeah, absolutely. You could go ahead, do it. But in Venice, being a complicated city, it's not the mayor alone that decides, even though he loved the idea. He couldn't sign off on it. So we still had to have the Art Council to sign off on it. Eventually they did. And then the drama began, because we had to dig in an area that has been there basically for over 1,000 years. And we, on land, you can be very precise, right? You can set the foundation blocks exactly where you want to put them. But in the water, we were working 12 meters underneath. It was very, very complex. And then we were also dealing with the rising and lowering of the tide. So that was continuously moving. And it's something that we had never done. It was completely new. And it was crazy. I remember that we were able to place one hand, but that the second one, there was no way it wasn't going in. It wasn't fitting because the tide had risen, and the weight upwards was more than the weight of the actual hand going down, and so we could not screw it in. We could not bolt it in to the base that we had prepared, and we had to wait till the next day when the tide lowered. But we didn't know if it was actually going to lower that much to allow us to actually set it in. And then the next day was the inauguration, where all the press and the mayor came. So again, there was a small miracle, actually a big miracle, because the tide did lower and we were able to place the hand really 1 hour before the inauguration. So it was crazy, but it was an immediate success. I was actually blown away by the success that I didn't expect it to be that successful. I was also helped by a certain gentleman, the president of the US, because he had just withdrew from the Paris Accord, President Trump, and so the news were speaking about what he had just done. And then that same day, my hands go up in Venice about climate change, and he had just left, withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Accord. So it was a big news. So CNN, and BBC, and other top news agencies used my sculpture, against what the President Trump had done. So that was the second miracle. Because in the end, as good as you can plan things, you always need a little bit of luck too. Luck or a lot of luck. Luck is a part of any job in the end. Transports can go wrong. Anything can go wrong. So as good as you plan, you have to have contingency plans as well. So let me show you some images of, I hope I don't disconnect again when I come back. So let me show you some images of support. Screen. Okay, so here we go. So this, of course, these was the building bridges. Look, all the designs that we had to go through. Health and safety and so forth and so on. Okay, so support. This is the piece coming out of the water. This is the building. These were 15 meters tall, by the way. Well, one is 15 and the other is 17. Okay, so I didn't lose you this time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so it was crazy. It was very dramatic. There was an image there which you probably didn't, well, you saw, but you for me it was very important, is when the police actually approached the boat and they hand me something. They were handing me the mm, the authorization to place the hands. Imagine, we didn't have the authorization till an hour before start the installation. That's how crazy it was. So it was right to the last minute, but it was very exciting. You know, it's one of the moments that definitely one of the highlights of my career. We were very courageous to do it, and we were able to do it, and it was just fantastic. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about this.
Okay, so if anyone has questions, they can just, okay, Zainab, you go first.
Hi. So, firstly, thank you for your informative presentation. And I would like to ask, how do you approach when collaborating with organizations like UN, climate change, and UNESCO? And how does that affect your design choices?
Well, any sculptures, any project, of course, is site specific, unless it's a multi-site project. But you know, the first thing is, of course, talking to the team and seeing what they want and what their objective is. Also, that will give me an idea of a size, scope of the artwork, size of the artwork. If it's for a temporary or permanent installation, and again, what's the purpose behind it? What are we trying to do? So the first thing is working on the message itself, right? Because an image is worth 1,000 words, always. So the easier you can make it, then the more people are gonna be able to identify with it. Because if you make something very complicated and you have to explain it to people, then I don't think that that's very successful. I try to make my work simple. You know, less is more. You know, for some people that might be a little banal, a little bit easy, a little too easy, but that's how I am. That's the art that I try to do. I don't create art for the critics, for the art critic. I create art for the public, and that doesn't mean that you have to be an art connoisseur. I mean, if you go into a pizzeria and you try a good pizza, you know if you like the good pizza, right? You loved it. It was a pizza you loved. You don't have to be a 5-star chef to be able to appreciate the pizza. So I think that art is the same. Art has to speak to you from within, and especially when it's public art, it's for the public to enjoy, and therefore it has to be direct, and people have to be able to interact with it and see almost themselves reflected in it. So mostly, especially when I'm working with big organizations, that's the focus, right? It's the universal focus that the artwork has to have. Unless specifically they say it's for this purpose, so this and this and this has to happen. And then we'll try to find the formula. Anything else? Then, you know, the funny thing is that you guys don't want to ask me questions, but then I get DMs. I get lots of DMs on my Instagram when people ask me lots of questions. Ask them now so everybody can hear them, and I can answer to everybody.
Actually, I was gonna ask you a question if no one asks. Because that I'm the host, I hesitated a little. So my question would be that, well, in support, we see the structure is beneath the under the water. So the material choice, how did you come up with the plan? Because it like every material dissolves in the water even a little bit. So what did you do to protect from that happening?
Well, this was the same material that you would do a boat hub in, so boat hull in. So it's a resin, and it's like a fiberglass with foam inside. Now, it's interesting because it was recycled material that I used, and then we recycled the hands. People, in fact, ask me, where are the hands now? The hands don't exist anymore because they were taken back to Spain, disassembled, and chopped up and recycled. So also, this sculpture was temporary. So we had a permit for 6 months, and it stayed double that. I think it stayed 1 year, maybe 13 months. So I didn't have to think of something that was everlasting. I didn't have to think of a material that was everlasting. And anyway, it was resin. So yeah, so it's plastic based. So unfortunately, even though it was recycled, it's still plastic based. So as we know, unfortunately, plastics last a long time. So I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem with water degradation or any of that. And I knew it was going to be in the water, so I had to work with that material. Also, again, if you have to think that I made this in 3 months. It took me a year to plan, but only 3 months to make, because I only had 3 months. If I were to do them today, and they were to tell me, okay, it's not going to be temporary, it's going to be for permanent installation in Venice. Yeah, I might not use the same material. I would have to research it and see which is the best material, taking into account of, again, the sustainability, but also the durability of the artwork. Because sometimes, technology is ever evolving, but not all sustainable products are permanent. And we have to, so you have to make a choice. It's a balance of what you can do, what you can't do.
Thank you so much for your answer.
May I ask?
Yeah, of course, Ajam.
Ciao, Lorenzo. Thanks a lot for this stimulating presentation. I was actually wondering about the management process in terms of stakeholders, because I'm working in the management of cultural heritage field. So I was wondering, how is it going on in management of art? Because you are dealing with big companies. I'm sure that it also includes the local communities, or I don't know, national governments or something. So I was wondering about this management process.
Yeah, well, again, it depends. Also, I have a big team, so I'm always working with the local authorities and with the local team that help me manage it. My base is in Spain, but of course, I'm traveling all the time. I travel all around the world, so there's a lot of like work in the back office first before you do any major sculpture or any major installation. Speaking to, for example, hopefully I'll be able to carry out a very ambitious project in Venice, in Sulzano, which is in Italy. It's where a fantastic artist called Cristo did an installation called Floating Piers. And I was given, I was awarded the chance to install my sculpture there on the lake. And because of COVID, we were supposed to do it in 2019, then 2020, 2021, and now 2022, hopefully. But this is a very, very, very ambitious project where I want local community to definitely be a part of it, the local schools. The whole project has to do with sustainability, with recycling, with the recuperation of the lake and the undergrowth, and water treatment. Think that the cost of the entrance to see the sculpture will be a plastic bottle. So you have to bring a plastic bottle so that for us to recycle, or else you don't, or anything to recycle. So whether it be a plastic bottle or something that we can recycle, that's the cost. That's the ticket cost. And in turn, we give you a seed that you need to plant. And then you have access to the sculpture. We're working on a lot of different materials. We're working with, I don't want to give too much away because, of course, yeah, a lot of it is still a secret. I can't talk about it, but I'm very excited about this project. And the kids, the local schools, they will be involved and everything. So I'm very excited about that. And of course, I'm dealing with the local authorities, with the town authorities, with the regional authorities, and it's very exciting. So as much as possible, we try to use local craftsmanship when possible. I'm a firm believer of that. Yeah, so that's how I work.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so last but not least, I want to show you, 1 second. Yeah, I want to show you the last sculpture, which is called Together. You know, we've come out this very difficult time, this period where basically the world shut down, COVID. And I am a very tactile person. For me, really touch, embracing people, embracing my friends, my family, and people. When I meet people, it's always been very important. And as you know, we haven't been able to do that for a while. And then the world was shut down. You couldn't travel, and there was, now that we're experiencing a new renaissance, right? Coming back together. So I was very, very honored and lucky to take part in a joint exhibition with other artists where I presented a sculpture called Together in front of the pyramids in the plateau, on the Giza Plateau. And the exhibition was put together and curated by Art d'Egypte. They did an amazing, amazing, amazing job. I believe there were 6 or 7 women that put this whole thing together, and we're all so proud of them because, it was unimaginable to think that the local authorities would allow something like that to happen. That has never happened before. I mean, the pyramids are the only standing structures from the, of course, original 7 wonders of the world. Yeah, they were built 4,500 years ago. So when I was planning on what am I going to show in front of the pyramids, I had to take a lot of things into account. But first and foremost, I had to completely show full respect for these amazing structures in the background. So I decided to work with a different material that I usually work in, and I wanted them to be very light and transparent. And so I worked with a wire mesh. And I like the effect so much that I'm now using it in many of my new sculptures. I'm using this, this medium now, the wire mesh, because it's there, but it's not there. Yeah, I love it. And also it gives you a different view at daytime than at nighttime with the lighting and all that. So let me just show you and share one last time my screen. And we're gonna go to that piece there called Together. One second. Is it sharing? Do you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, so let me go. So I'm gonna skip this. Here it is, Together. Okay, so there's also a video here of the sculpture. Okay, so I think I'm back now. So yeah, so that was very, very special. And just so you understand, we had the team that left from Spain from the workshop I use for this particular kind of medium. They're called 3D Technics. And they're amazing. They're about an hour from where I am. And so, of course, that team then went all the way to Egypt. So, of course, you have to deal with the local authorities. You have to deal with the local planning and then the site planning, the site authorities and the cultural ministry, because, of course, it's a World Heritage Site. So there was a lot of paperwork. But in the end, we were able to do it. And it took 4 days. It took 3 days to install. Building bridges took a month to install. And support took, building the platforms and putting up the sculptures again, also about 5 days. So a month, 5 days for support, and about 4 or 5 days for Together. So, you know, you have to think about also logistics, moving these pieces, bringing the team over. It's quite something. But I love it, you know, and I get to travel the world with my art. So I'm very lucky. And also, I just wanted to say one thing. Together, we had over 3 billion shares on social media, and it was visited in under 3 weeks. It was visited by close to 600,000 people. So it was a very successful exhibition, and hopefully we'll be able to plan something new there in the plateau this coming year as well. We'll see. Anyway, any questions? I'm very happy to answer. Also, I think I spoke too much, because I think that you gave me an hour, and I think we passed that a long time ago.
Yeah, but it's all right. It was a fun presentation. Thank you. So if anyone has questions, they can they can just use the raise hand button. And I know that there are some questions, so just don't hesitate.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, people often ask me why I use hands so much. Of course, I don't only use hands, but with my big public installations, often, yes, I do use hands for a very simple reason. I think that you could say so much with a gesture, and most gestures are universal, like, help, I'm hungry, I can't hear, or so forth and so on. Silence, these are universal gestures, or, giving a hand, asking for help. And so again, my art is about transmitting universal messages. And I want everybody to be able to understand it. And then I'm Italian. I use my hands all the time. Italians don't know how to speak without using their hands, So yeah, that's another reason. But also, I exhibit my work all over the world. And not everywhere I'm a figurative artist, so I can't use a naked figure everywhere. In some countries, I can't. I exhibit a lot of my work in the Middle East, for example, and I have lots of clients all over the world. But imagine in the Middle East, I could not put a naked body, but with the hand sculptures, I am able to do that. I'm able to do public sculpture all over the world using simple hand gestures. Now in the circle, I use the circle and the world. I use the globe. The globe, like the world, is definitely one of my preferred forms that I use. And the circle, because it's just perfect. It's the harmony of the circle. I've always been attracted. And of course, the strength of a circle, when you're talking about weights, you're talking about supporting, and you're talking about gravity, the circle is very resistant, so I use it a lot. And it also is coming back to, what goes around comes around. And so I use that concept a lot as well. Thank you.
I think Yağmur has a question.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was like a burst of inspiration, both in terms of the design process and technical features and everything. I would like to ask, together conveyed very meaningful messages, especially in the times we go through all together, as you mentioned. And as an artist, how do you unite art, history, and heritage, especially in Forever Now, and the 7 of World Wonders, as you mentioned before?
Yeah. Well, it's not easy to do. I had many ideas. I had many designs that I came up with, and it was difficult to choose one. Usually, when sometimes I get that eureka moment, and I'm like, that's the one I want to do, and then you start doing it, you start drawing it out, and it doesn't work, for some reason it doesn't click. It's not harmonious enough, or it doesn't, or maybe in your mind you imagine it one way, but then when you're actually drawing it out, and there's something missing, and you're not completely satisfied. So yeah, again, I have to, in one way, reflect our times, which I did using stainless steel, because it's a modern material. If you think of the background is stone, and I used a stainless steel. So it was a break, but at the same time, it was no way overshadowing or disrespectful. Well, you couldn't overshadow the pyramids even if you wanted to, but you know, because of transparency, because it was mesh, I was able to keep them light. So there's this modern play of technology in a place where really civilization started. But it's interesting because it's a place that, yeah, okay, we were modern artists, which of course we use technology, and yet we're so modern and so technically advanced, but we still don't know how these pyramids were built. It's incredible, you know. So you think of our technology, then you think about their technology, and maybe in some ways they were more advanced than we were. So it was very interesting. Talking about time in the place where time almost stood still, because that plateau has stayed relatively unchanged for the past 4,500 years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I guess Ege has a question to ask. So.
As you mentioned, there's a diversity in your team, including you as an artist and engineers and calculation divisions. How would you elaborate the working dynamic in your multidisciplinary team?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely is team effort. Definitely it's teamwork. And I could not do it without a team behind me. I mean, this is everyone back at the office. All the girls that I have at the office. By the way, it's an all-female crew that I have back at the office. And I think that's very important because also it lets me see things under a different perspective. And I need that because I need my work to be harmonious. So yeah, I discuss things at the group, and of course I discuss it with my wife, who is my first critic, and she's been with me now for 36 years, and she studied art and art history and museology, and so she has a very good eye at seeing what works and doesn't work, and she can immediately see the harmony in things. And so the first team is at home, and then the second team is back at the office, and then of course I discuss with the gallery, and then eventually I discuss with the client. So I have a design team. So what I do first is, once I know what I'm going to do, or at least 2 or 3 ideas, I start jotting them down on a piece of paper. And then nowadays we work with renders. So I have an amazing guy, his name is Joel, that works with me. And he works on the renders, on the 3D. And that is just amazing. That just changed my whole presentations. You know, years ago, I would do, you know, pencil drawing for the client. But now, you know, that pencil drawing takes life. You know, you can really animate 3D, put it in the surrounding you want to put it with Google Earth. If Google car happens to be able to go by there, then with Google Earth, you can just place the sculpture right there. So it's amazing that, you know, what we're able to do today. I just wonder what we'll be able to do in a few years. So the work really comes to life, and probably virtual reality will come into play in the future. I started working with it myself, where I can place on a lawn or in a field, and you can really have that immersive experience without actually moving from your apartment. And we know what that's going to, right? The metaverse. It's going to be something quite interesting, this metaverse. Of course, like with every new technology, there's pros and cons. I'm a very tactile person. I love, coming up close to it, but in the future, you won't be able to distinguish whether you're there or you're not, really there or really not. We will have these tools, we'll have these gloves, we will have pressure, we will have everything. We will have sight, sound, smell, temperature. In a way, it's going to be crazy what's going to happen in the future. But on the creative side, it's going to be great, especially for you guys, right? Because again, remember that thing that I mentioned in the beginning, gravity, right? We won't have to deal with with the problematic of gravity anymore when you build in the metaverse. You can have these amazing buildings just floating in the air, right? And the same with art. I can have monumental art just floating in the air, and I don't have to worry anymore about the foundation. So it'll be very, 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 very interesting how that develops. I just hope that they don't that we don't forget about the real world and the real problems. And at times I think that, yeah, I tell my son, he's 16 and he's very excited about the metaverse. And I tell him, that's great. You're going to have lots of time creating stuff there and living that. But don't forget that there's a real world down here that we still have to take care of. Because I just fear that sometimes, a lot of it is to distract us. A lot of it is to distract us from the real problems. And, you might see a beautiful, perfect world in the metaverse, but the world down here is going to craps. And that we can't allow that.
Thank you so much for your answer. So is there anyone who wants to ask another question? If not, I believe there are no further questions, so we can slowly close the session. So Lorenzo, thank you so much for this wonderful evening. It was an honor to host you here on Zoom, and we hope in the near future, maybe in Istanbul, we hope that we will meet you in person as well.
Looking forward to that. I theoretically, I might have an exhibition actually in Istanbul in May, and we're planning on a big surprise for the city. So hopefully I'll be able to bring something quite special, a monumental work for Istanbul and hopefully even Ankara. So we'll see. Ankara.
Well, looking forward to meet you. So what can I say? Also, we want to take some screenshots and combine them. So if everyone can open their cameras for like a second or two, it would be amazing. Kamera açacağız.
And also thank you everyone who has joined us tonight. Is there anything you would like to add, Lorenzo?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys and really, believe in yourselves, believe in your dreams, and just work hard, and dreams come true. They really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much, and see you at our following events. We want to thank everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.